Today, we are going to be going over our Canoptek Circle Kill Team guide called Cracking Canoptek. We're going to be going through all their tricks, their main strategies, their weaknesses, and how they work. So, this is going to be including all the changes from the recent data slate in October, the pre-World Championships 2025. This is part of our World Championships, the Road to the World Championship series, and this is going to be giving players the tools to deal with the most recent menace in the kill team competitive scene, the Canoptek Circle Kill Team. Our last two major GTs have been won by Canoptek Circle, with John Reese from Cali New Roll a Crit in Las Vegas Open, hosted by Squad Games, and by Evie in the New York Open, hosted by Just Another Kill Team podcast. Both of those tournaments were recently won by Canoptek Circle. There's been some nerfs since the Las Vegas Open, and I believe, though, that New York Open may have used the most recent data slate. But either way, we're going to be going into what they're going to be looking like in the World Championships. Okay, so we're going to be covering the team in detail. If you already know some info, look for the chapter marking so that you can go directly to what interests you. If you know the unit profiles, for example, and you're just interested in their attack up choices, their strategies, you can go directly to what you want. Okay, so we're going to start the guide off now. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the playstyle of the Canoptek Circle. What is their main playstyle? They are a very tricksy team. They've got a lot of tricks to use that can catch you unawares if you're not in the know about them. So we're going to go over that. They're very positional. They have a Obelisk node matrix that powers them up. Most of their power comes from this matrix. We're going to be going over that. And they're very tanky. So one of the hardest, most durable teams to basically punch through. And we're going to be going through why they are so tanky as well. They are also very reliable when they're on the matrix. They have access to Accurate 2 and Ceaseless, making them quite reliable if they are on the matrix. Okay, now we're going to be going over the kill team composition. Okay, so it is an 8-operative kill team. However, it is split into 2 distinct groups. We have the 5 operatives that count for kill op, and we have 3 warrior operatives that don't count for kill op. So, the 5 operatives that count for kill op are the Geomancer, the 2 support macro sites, namely the Accelerator and the Reanimator, and the 2 tomb crawler operatives that I like to call the linebackers heavy hitters, okay? And then the other group is the 3 expendable operatives, the 3 warriors, okay? We are going to be now going through the overall lore and flavor of the kill team, okay? So just as a quick little backdrop, this kill team is kind of meant to represent a Geomancer, which is a Cryptek, and Canoptek constructs guarding a tomb world, or let's say going out and trying to get a specific objective done. It's like the Geomancer and his Canoptek construct kind of little group going out and doing their thing. Geomancer is a Cryptek. It's kind of like a High Priest Archmage of the Necrons. They all have kind of different lores of magic that they are adept in. The Geomancer it means manipulator of like earth and rock. Okay, and we're going to see that a lot of the abilities kind of revolve around that. He's either manipulating the obelisks or terrain, or he's commanding his underlings around him. Okay, the Canoptek constructs, his support pieces are bug-like automata that can be commanded by him. Okay, so that's the general lore. Now, going into the Geomancer a little bit more, Geomancers are crypteks that manipulate physical strata in a deadly fashion. Using devices known as geomantic manipulators, these arcane scientists can transmute matter into obelisk nodes, and through these locuses, access hidden reserves of power information. So it's all about this main quarterback operative manipulating the obelisk nodes. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the obelisk nodes. So this team gets 3 obelisk node markers that they can use in the game. And these obelisk nodes are concentrations of Necron technology, hubs of energy, and data streams. Okay. Impelled into positions where they can connect in a matrix of power, they aid the Cryptek's ambitions while hampering their foes. Okay, so we have a picture here of kind of obelisk-like structures with big beams of power. The Cryptek and Canoptek Circle Kill Team gets kind of 3 of these in mini form. Okay, so how it works in game is this is a faction rule. As a strategic gambit in the first turning point, place your 3 obelisk node markers wholly within your territory. As a strategic gambit in each turning point after the first, you can move your obelisk node markers up to 3 inches each. Okay, and just one stipulation is in a kill zone that uses close quarter rolls, the obelisk node matrix cannot be measured through wall terrain. So you're going to set up in the first strategic phase 3 20 millimeter obelisk node markers. They could be anywhere in your territory, which means anywhere in your half. Okay, so let's say you're on this side, you're going to be anywhere within this orange colored half. Not just your deployment zone, but anywhere in your half. So these are what the obelisk node markers look like. These are some hobbied obelisk node markers that you could go a little bit extra mile if you wanted a little bit more of a cool vibe to them, but they come as just small markers to put on the board. Okay, so when you're putting them down on the board, you can kind of place each of these 3 markers anywhere in your territory. However, if you place them within 6 of each other, they create an matrix between them. Okay, so it's like almost these energy lines of power get connected between each of the markers that are within 6 inches of each other. Okay, so it's horizontally 6 inches. The height is actually irrelevant. So if you placed one on a vantage and it's kind of more than 6 inches high, it doesn't matter. It's just horizontally 6 inches. If they are all 3 of them within 6 inches of each other, they can create a triangle with 3 distinct lines between them. Now, each of these markers is 20 millimeters, which is 0.78 of an inch, so almost an inch, and that is all considered the matrix. So it's about a 3/4 of an inch line thick that operatives can be on. Now there's tools to represent this that come in the Tomb World, but I've seen some people build their own, and this is going to be helpful for understanding if an operative is on the matrix or not. And then there's going to be some rules that intervene with the matrix, and it's the markers and the line between them that is considered the matrix. Okay, and they don't have to be within 6 inches of each other. They just create a matrix between them when they are. Okay, so that being said, you get to move your matrix 3 inches. Each of the markers can move 3 inches, but there are other ways of moving the markers that this team has access to. They have a firefight ploy called Animate Obelisk Nodes, and you can move, so they can activate this during their firefight phase. They can move up to 6 inches, each of these markers. So they can move 1 marker 6 inches, they can move 3 markers 1 inch each, they can move 3 markers 2 inch each, but as long as the combination of moving the markers doesn't exceed 6, they're going to be good. You can also move them 0 inches effectively to skip an activation. Okay, so this is a little trick they have to kind of wait out their opponent. If they do need, they could just kind of like activate their obelisk nodes instead. However, now we're going to see that if we look here, we have 3 examples of ways to place the matrix down. Okay, so here, one example is we have a triangle that's been placed inside this middle room. Another example is we have this long line that's placed in their back deployment zone. And another example is they're going from their deployment zone kind of into the midboard with a long line. Okay, so this is what they have access to in terms of placement. This is probably a few of the different arrangements they're going to be looking to make. Okay, so they also have a faction equipment that allows them to do this animate obelisk nodes D3 times per game for 0 CP. Okay, so they're most likely going to be taking this as moving their matrix around is going to be hugely important for this team. Okay, now going into the operatives, we have the Geomancer, who is the quarterback. Okay, 3 APL, 14 wounds, 3 up save, and a 6-inch move, also on a big 50 millimeter base. Okay, 3 important abilities. It can perform mission actions, operate hatch from node markers, can make any operative perform an out of action activation, actively overriding the once per turn action limitation, and can make any operative on the team teleport their move stat. Also has a terrain-based damage ability. We're going to be getting into all of those in depth right now. Okay, so the first one is on the data card. It's just something that the Geomancer can do. It doesn't take an action point. It's Obelisk no control. Whenever this operative would perform a mission action, if it requires this operative to control an objective marker, it can instead determine control from one of your Obelisk node markers. And whenever this operative would perform the operate hatch action, you can open or close a hatchway that's access point is within 1 inch of your Obelisk node markers instead. Note that you must fulfill the operate hatch actions conditions. Okay, so this is huge because the Geomancer can basically do mission actions without having to be on the objective. He could just do it from an Obelisk node that controls it. Okay, and we're going to cover this a little bit more in detail afterwards. Okay, another hugely thing that this is his kind of quarterback move. It's called Canoptek control for 1 action point. You can select a Canoptek operative visible and within 6 inches of the operative of the Geomancer. Alternatively, you just select one that's on the matrix and visible. Then this selected operative can immediately perform a 1 AP action for free. It cannot move more than 2 inches during that action. Okay, so this is very important because the Geomancer can make any of the other operatives perform an action out of their activation, effectively overriding the once per turn limitation. And there's importantly no restriction on actions they have done before in the turn. So if they've shot, they could shoot again. If they haven't shot yet, they could shoot first. It's also a way of getting a 2-inch reposition that they can do outside of their activation as well. So, for example, they can reposition 7, dash for 3, and then he can make them go another 2. So this team has access to quite a bit of movement if they need it, and we're going to be seeing more movement in action just now. So the molecular breach ability, or just you could think of it as the move through walls ability, the Geomancer can select one operative visible to and within 6 inches of it, or if it's visible to and on the matrix. Okay? The next time the selected operative performs an action in which it moves, don't move it. Instead, remove it from the kill zone, set it back up wholly within a distance equal to its move stat, or 3 inches if it was a dash, horizontally of its original location. So again, vertical doesn't matter here. Importantly, it can be measured through wall terrain in Tomb World and in Gallowdark. Okay, so that means that they could just phase through walls. Note that it gains no additional distance when performing the charge action. It must be set up in a location it can be placed unless it's the charge action and cannot be set up within control range of an enemy operative. Okay, so basically he can make any operative, including herself. The Geomancer could do it on herself, can make any operative phase through walls. So this is something you've got to be very cognizant of. If they're behind a kill zone wall on Volcus, they just phase through it whenever they want. Okay, can be done up to 2 times per turning point if they have counteracts. So there's a lot of tricks that can be done on counteracts if you outnumber this team as well. Can charge using this, but you don't get the additional 2 inches like normal. Can reposition 7 inches and then 3-inch dash. So the important thing to keep in mind is that it's the next time the operative performs an action in which it moves. So it couldn't, if you've done this action on an operative, it can't dash and then teleport. The next move that it makes has to be the teleport phase through walls action. Okay, so they need to be in a position where they can teleport immediately and then they can maybe dash afterwards. So just keep that in mind. It can cover a lot of distance, and another stipulation is it's only one of the move actions that is a phase through walls. It can't do a dash and reposition that are both phasing through walls. Okay, our next one is going to be Geomantic Disturbance. This is a little bit less important than the other abilities that the Geomancer has, but it can be something to look out for as well. The Geomancer can basically manipulate terrain features, kind of blowing them up. Think of it as like a little avalanche or something that's happening from a terrain feature breaking a wall onto your operative. It's called Geomantic Disturbance. The Geomancer selects a point on a terrain feature that's visible and within 8 inches of this operative. Then you're going to roll 2d6 separately for each operative within 2 inches of that point. So it's kind of like a 2-inch blast from a particular point on a terrain piece. If the result is higher than the operative's remaining wounds, inflict damage on it equal to the difference. Okay, so let's say your operative has 5 remaining wounds. If they roll 2d6 and roll 10, your operative is going to take 5 damage from that. Okay, so they're trying to roll high on 2d6, and then they're hoping your remaining wounds is little, so that makes it more capable of doing more damage. Okay. Now, the big thing with this is you could think of it as having full seek if your operatives are next to a terrain piece, which they're going to probably be trying to get heavy cover. So it's almost like full seek within 8 inches, and it's good against bunched up weaker units. So if your units have taken some damage, the fewer wounds your operatives have, the more damage this has potential to do. And it's a way that the Geomancer can get 2 damage actions in the same activation, so they can use their regular gun profile, and then they can use this in addition, so they can wound you and then do this afterwards and do additional damage to you. Okay, it's kind of like an 8-inch pistol range as well, so just something to keep in mind. Oh, and one more thing is this operative cannot perform this action while it has a conceal order, so it's kind of like treated like a shooting action. Okay, perfect. So now we're going to go into faction equipment called the Matrix Manipulator. This is something that to keep in mind that is attached to the Geomancer. It's a faction equipment they're most likely going to take every time. Is once per battle, your Geomancer operative is treated as your 4th Obelisk node marker. So this is going to come in handy. It's a way of extending the matrix once per battle, and it can be used to give the Geomancer ceaseless accurate 2, despite being far from the matrix markers. We're going to see a lot of buffs coming from the matrix, and the ability to get a 4th marker down that is your Geomancer is going to be a pretty impactful thing once per game. So watch out for this. They have ways of extending the matrix to the Geomancer. Okay, so now we're getting into the tomb crawlers. There's 2 of these. They're on 50 mil bases, just like the Geomancer. They have 21 wounds, which is one of the highest profiles in the game. They have 3-up save, so 21 wounds plus a 3-up save is very tanky already. They're 2 APL, but they count as 3 APL when they're on the matrix. They count for 3 APL for controlling a marker at any point due to their steadfast rule. And they have a weapon sentinel rule, which means even if they have conceal, they can be targeted behind light terrain. They're too big to hide behind light terrain. Okay, we'll be coming back to them later. Let's go into the support operatives, starting with the Accelerator. Now, the Accelerator is very similar in look to the Warriors. So you really do have to look for this claw arm that's coming out of its back. And this is the comms of the team. Okay, this claw-armed macro sight bug thing is the comms of the team. It has 2 abilities, one that can give an APL to your operatives and one that can take away an APL from enemy operatives. So each of these abilities has to be visible and within 3 inches, or it has to be on the Obelisk node matrix. So if you're buffing your pieces, they have to be on the matrix. If you're debuffing your enemy, -1 APL, they have to be on the Obelisk node matrix. Okay, and the big thing is this does count for kill op. Okay, it's 7 wounds, 7-inch move, 4-up save. Okay, now one tricky thing is that it can do this +1, -1 APL up to 3 times because the Geomancer can Canoptek control it. And then if you do get a counteract as well, and this is on engage, you can do it again. So playing against this team, you got to watch out for the fact that they can maybe hand out 3 APL on 3 separate occasions or debuff you in 3 separate ways. I mean, that takes a bit more setup, but they can do it. Now, getting into the next support operative called the Reanimator, we're going to be looking for the head orb. Okay, so it has this big orb on its head, circular orb. This is what it's going to be doing its nanoscare beam through. And this is the team's medic. We can think of it as the team's medic. So instead of the reanimate feature like in Hyrotech Circle, they've basically given this team a medic rule instead. So basically, if they get shot, if one of your operatives gets shot and it would be incapacitated, instead of being incapacitated, it has 1 rune remaining, and then after that action, it can perform a free dash action. Okay, so this is very interesting, and it looks like this action actually doesn't cost this operative an APL like it does with other operatives, which is a very interesting stipulation. So usually the medic action minuses an APL from the operative, but reading here, it actually looks like it doesn't take an APL away from this operative. So something to keep in mind. They can do it within 6 inches invisible to, or if the operative is on the Obelisk node matrix. And we're going to be taking a little bit deeper dive into that in just a second. The Nanoscura beam, select one friendly Canoptek circle operative visible to and within 6, or if they're on the matrix, you can heal them up to 3d3 lost wounds. It cannot be an operative that the reanimate rule was used on during this turn point. So this can heal up to 9. Okay, so usually a medic can heal up to 2d3. This one can heal up to 3d3 once per turn. Okay, it was actually nerfed. Before you could do it multiple times, but now it's only once per turn, which is really good because before it was kind of broken that they could heal like 3d3 3 times a turn. A little bit too much. Now it's only once per turn they can use the heal. And only once per turn they can use the reanimate medic ability. Okay, and another thing is that, just to stipulate, you cannot use this rule if this operative is incapacitated or if it's a shoot action and this operative would be your primary or secondary target. Okay, if your operative goes down in combat, they cannot be revived. This is only from a shooting attack. Okay, because this operative nor the operative you're trying to revive cannot be within control range of an enemy operative. So it's only from a shooting attack. Okay, the Canoptek Macrosite Warriors, these are your 3 expendable constructs. So basically, they are not considered for kill op, and they are not considered for any victory conditions that require killing or being killed. So we got a little bit extra clarification for the World Championships. For the TAC ops that involve any killing or being killed, they are not included. So as follows: for sweep and clear, a swept token is not gained. For dominate, a dominate token is not gained. For rout, VP are not gained. For martyrs, importantly, a martyr token is not gained. For steal intelligence, an intelligence mission marker is not placed. So this is really big. If your team revolves around killing operatives and getting dominate, rout, or steal intelligence, these 3 operatives, these warriors, will not give you anything. Now, it's important as well, this kind of shuts down the martyr strategy for this Canoptek team, because usually they would want these operatives to be the ones dying and putting a martyr token down, but now they cannot do that. Okay, so martyrs is not a viable option for this team anymore due to this clarification. One thing to keep in mind with these operatives is you think of them as expendable, but that's only for anything involving incapacitation. This doesn't prevent them from doing mission actions or counting as controlling objectives. They could be, for example, envoys. They could plant banners. They can go and do crit ops. So they're very, very useful. So it's going to be a little bit of a delicate balancing killing them versus kind of allocating your resources elsewhere. Now, talking about killing them, you have to debate it because they can come back. One of them could come back each turn in the strategic gambit phase due to a ceaseless scuttling. So if you killed one warrior in turn 2, on turn 3, they in the strategic gambit can bring back one of them on conceal wholly within their drop zone, and they can reselect their weapons. So if they had the blast version, they can select the piercing and vice versa. They're fully usable, so they could come back. They could come back right away. Another rule for these operatives is if you kill them within 2 inches of your operative, they can inflict a D3 worth of damage. So either 2 or 3. On a 2+, they inflict that damage. So it's not guaranteed, but it's virtually guaranteed on a 2+ there. So they can watch out for chip damage if you kill them in close range. Okay, now we're going to be going into the tricksy tricks of this team. We're going to be highlighting all their tricks very quickly here. We're going to be doing Geomancer tricks, faction tricks, support piece tricks. Okay, so the Geomancer can make operatives move through walls. This is going to be a very quick summary. We're going to go through these in detail if we haven't already. Almost half the team doesn't count for kill op. can prevent incapacitation from shooting with their reanimate ability very far away from the matrix, can do the same action multiple times per turning point through Canoptek control. Their operatives come back, which is their warriors, can lower your APL on the matrix, can redirect shots or fights to another operative other than the Geomancer within 3 inches, can control objectives without being there. We're going to get into that. Can boost APL multiple times a turn through Canoptek control or counteracts, can do mission actions through the matrix, through the Obelisk nodes. Geomancer can counteract, make a crazy good gun from the crawlers, fire twice or 3 times a turn, and they can heal 3 once a turn. Okay, there's more tricks. We're going to be getting into it. Okay, so now we're going to get into a section called Matrix. Okay, little play on words. They have tons of little tricks they can do with their Matrix. The Reanimator can prevent incapacitation from shooting from up to 14.36 inches away because there's the matrix is 6 inches between, so this is at maximum distance. The matrix is 6 inches between the markers, and then the markers themselves are 0.78 inches. So 0.78 times 3 is going to be 2.36. Add that to 12. Now you're at 14.36. So they could have a tomb crawler on the very end of one end of the matrix and the reanimator on the other end, and they can reanimate them from very far away. So you got to look out for that. Then also they can heal them 3d3 from very far away. Okay, so the reanimator can be far away behind a wall, but can still do their medic ability. Okay, then we're going to have a similar thing with the Accelerator. They can boost APL from anyone on the matrix. One thing now to keep in mind is that any of their operatives that are 2 APL that are on the matrix can go up to 3 APL while they're on the matrix. Okay, so one stipulation is the operatives can never get to 4 APL because it's a maximum of 3. Before, the Geomancer on the matrix was considered 4 APL. Now it's 3 APL. So this is a recent nerf in the data slate. It's going to help out with the Geomancer not being quite so powerful. Once they leave the matrix, they go down to 2 APL. But if the Accelerator gives them 3 APL, then they can leave the matrix and use 3 APL. Okay, so now we're going to get into another Accelerator trick is, like we talked about earlier, they can minus APL from operatives. So we talked about also the markers moving. You can have an operative of yours that is not on the matrix, but if they move it in the strat phase or with the animate obelisk nodes, they could put the marker underneath your operative and then be in a position to subtract APL from you. So you got to watch out for this. The matrix, if you're close to it, you can have your operative they can move it to be underneath your operative. Okay, so now one important thing about the matrix that we may not have touched on so much is that the obelisk node markers can control an objective marker within 1 inch of them. Okay, so this is really important because if there's an exposed objective in the middle of the board, you can place a marker down and you will count as controlling that objective. Okay, this is very interesting because it actually specifies other markers. So it doesn't even say objective marker specifically. It could be like a plant banner marker. And this is very interesting. Okay, one stipulation is if more than one player would use their obelisk node markers to control the same marker, no obelisk node markers control it. Okay, so if you're playing the Canoptek mirror match, if you both have markers trying to control an objective, it cancels it out and neither player controls. Okay, so this is very tricky. You could see that matrix just being on an objective and be like, oh, they're not controlling it. I'm going to have, they're not doing well on the crit op. And then all of a sudden their node marker is the thing controlling it. One stipulation is if you have an operative that is contesting that marker, the same objective marker, let's say, as the obelisk node marker, a lot of markers being thrown around here. As soon as your operative is contesting, that obelisk node marker can no longer count as controlling it. Okay, it's only if it's uncontested. Okay, now this is something we talked on before, but here's a little diagram. The Geomancer through obelisk node control can perform mission actions and or operate hatch from the node markers instead. This includes crit op actions or tac op actions. So retrieval from tac op can be done through a node marker. Plant banner can be done through a node marker. There's a lot of things that can be done through node markers, which can catch you off guard. Crit op actions can be done like loot through node markers. Now, there's no stipulation that the Geomancer has to be anywhere near the matrix or node markers when they are doing this. So the Geomancer, for example, in this diagram, can be behind a piece of light terrain. They are not on the matrix, they're not touching the markers, nor are they in between the markers, but they can still use this obelisk node control. And if we see here in this diagram, we have a node marker all the way up here next to the hatch. The Geomancer can close or open that hatch from all the way over here in this position. Okay, so this is something to keep in mind. Very interesting trick they can do that you might be caught unawares. Okay, next matrix is some defensive things they can do through the matrix. This is called hyper shielding. This is a strategic ploy they have. And whenever an operative is shooting a friendly Canoptek circle operative, if your obelisk node matrix is intervening, or if you're on the matrix, you can reroll any of your defense dice results of one result. So they get ceaseless defense dice if they're being shot at. And the interesting thing is that if a shooting attack is, if a line is drawn from any of the opposing shooter from their base to your base, if that passes through the matrix, so the node markers themselves or the link between them, then you get the defense dice. So you could be shooting an operative, be like, oh, they're not on the matrix. But if your shot is passing through the matrix, they can still get the ceaseless saves. So something to keep in mind here. Now, they have another defensive buff, which is a firefight ploy called the shield flare. This is basically just a scratch, and it works the same way as the ceaseless ploy. If it passes through the matrix intervening, or if they're on the matrix, you can ignore one inflicted normal dice of damage. So not a crit, but a normal damage coming through, they can block it. This can be used in shooting or in combat. So this if they're on the matrix and you're trying to fight them, they can actually block it. They could do just a scratch. Okay. But shooting, importantly, intervening through the matrix, they still have access to this just a scratch. Okay, now another defensive buff in combat is called Soul Drain. This is a strategic ploy. So whenever you are fighting or retaliating against a Canoptek operative that's within the node matrix, you are going to subtract 1 from damage stats of the enemy operative's melee weapons to a minimum of 2 until the end of the action counteraction. This means that if the enemy operative moves through your obelisk node matrix, apply this change at the end of that move action until the end of the action activation counteraction. Okay, so if you charge through the matrix, if now your charge move goes intervening through the matrix, you will get your damage reduced in combat against the Canoptek. If they are on the matrix, you're going to get reduced. Okay, so this is something to keep in mind. You could think, oh, I'm just going to go finish them off. You got to keep in mind they can reduce damage from crits and normals in combat. So watch out for the breakpoints in terms of your damage. They have access to this. Okay, and we're going to get into a trick coming up. They can actually activate this not in the strategic phase if they need to. Okay, this is a weird one. So hopefully if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this diagram. They can slow your move action by 1 inch if you are going through the matrix. It's a strategic ploy called cryptogravitic repulsion. Once per action, and this is the key here, the first time an enemy operative would move within your obelisk node matrix, the distance is treated as an additional 1 inch. Note that this means if the enemy operative doesn't have sufficient move distance, the operative cannot move within your obelisk node matrix. Let's say you move 7, let's say you move 5, you only had 1 inch remaining. If that 1 inch would come within the node matrix, it would basically prevent you from doing that 1 inch because it's getting subtracted. Now, the tricky thing with this is if they make their matrix into a triangle formation and you dash through the first instance of the matrix, your dash will be 2 inches. Now, if you then reposition through the other instance of the matrix, your move will be now 5 inches if you had a 6-inch move, for example. They could pair this with a razor wire, which is going to cost you 3 inches to climb over. And then if you have to go through any doors or anything with accessible minusing 1 inch, they could set up a choke point, which can make it very hard for you to get to a particular spot. So you got to watch out for this. They have access to basically reduce your movement by quite a bit if they set it up properly. Okay, and this is what we just briefly mentioned before. If they don't do any of these strategic ploys in the strategic phase, they thought they wouldn't need it, or they didn't see a play you're going to do, or they're just kind of trying to surprise you, they can use a firefight ploy called Nodal Response, and they can, during a friendly operative Canoptek Circle Operatives activation, before or after it performs an action, you can change one of the strategic ploys you use during the turn, only pay the additional CP if it costs more, or use a strategic ploy now, pay its CP cost as normal. Okay, so they could activate the ceaseless defense, and then once you've shot them, they don't think they're going to need the defense anymore. They can switch to the ceaseless shooting. They can bait you into thinking that you can move through their matrix and then put that ploy up just before you move that prevents you from moving through it quickly. So a lot of matrix interaction happens from strategic ploys. This allows them to activate when needed, giving more precise CP management. This is going to probably cost them 1 CP to do this, and then 1 CP for the strategic ploy. So they're only going to use this in kind of extreme circumstances, but they do have access to this, so it's important that you know about it. Okay, getting into why they're tanky. They can get ceaseless saves. They can reduce the crit and normal damage in combat by 1 to a minimum of 2, like we said. They can ignore damage from a normal in combat or shooting if they're on the matrix. They get accurate 2 in combat on the matrix, and it helps them to survive. Can be healed up to 43 in 1 turn. 12 wounds potentially from the Reanimator, and then they have an equipment called Nano Scarab Caskets, which can heal D3 on activation. If killed by shooting, they can be revived to 1 wound by the Reanimator, as we saw. And this can all happen on their tanky, big 21 wound operatives. Now, the Geomancer has access to every defensive buff the rest of the team get, but they also have 2 more defensive buffs. They can have an operative take a shot, shoot, or fight action as long as they're visible 3 inches away. Any operative other than the Geomancer can take a fight or shoot. It's a firefight ploy called Sacrificial Thrall. They can spend 1 CP, and they can jump in the way for the Geomancer. Okay, then it can reduce piercing by 1 per turn. So they have an equipment that Geomancer can take that if you're shooting them with a Melta, for example, AP2, they can reduce it to AP. And then if you have AP1, they can reduce that to 0 once per turn. Okay, so the Geomancer can have multiple extra defensive buffs. Okay, now we're going to go into their offensive output, and this is a strategic ploy that could give them ceaseless if you're on the matrix, and similarly, if they're shooting through the matrix and it's intervening, they can get ceaseless. So the matrix, as we saw, it could either debuff your enemy's shooting coming through it, or kind of use as like an amplification accelerator if you're going through that matrix as well. Okay, so they also have a faction rule that just gives them accurate 2, which means they can retain 2 dice without even needing to roll it when they are on the matrix. Okay, these are both important because any operative on the team has access to these buffs, and important to just keep in mind that they only get the ceaseless when shooting. The accurate 2 is in fighting and shooting, but the ceaseless they have access to is only in shooting. But they have ways of shooting multiple times. They have a lot of access to piercing and blast, so you got to watch out. If you do give them chances to shoot you back, they're probably going to do a lot of damage. Getting into some actual profiles here, the Geomancer has a Tremor Glaive as its weapon, and it has 2 different shooting profiles and 1 combat profile. So the 2 different shooting profiles, it has one that's a piercing 1, piercing crits 2, 4 attacks, 3 up, 4/5 damage weapon. So it's like equal to a crack, but if they roll a crit, they could get piercing 2. This is unlimited range, so very powerful unlimited range single target weapon. And then they have the Geomancer has a blast 2-inch Seek Light stun weapon, which is the Quake. And this has been changed to 5 attacks and damage stats changed to 1/2. It was previously 6 and 1/3, but it has been nerfed because it was a bit too powerful. Now, it can get on that Blast 2 Lethal 5+ with stun on close quarters. So really good at if you have a bunch of operatives behind some light terrain, it can just Seek Light you and then blast Lethal 5 and then spike a bunch of crits and stun a lot of operatives. So you got to watch out for that. Now, in the close combat profile of the weapon, it's 4 attacks on 4s, 4/5. It has severe shock and stun. So usually shock is the combat version of stun, but in this case, it actually gets stun in close combat. And the reason that's very tricky is that if you're going in with a Space Marine, let's say, and has 3 APL, you're charging, you're going to be relying on fighting twice. You go in, you push through a damage. If you don't parry their crit out first, the Geomancer is going to use the crit that they can retain through severe, and they're going to push that crit through, and they're going to stun you, immediately minusing your APL. So that when you go to do that second fight action to finish off the Geomancer, you're now unable to do so because you went from a 3 APL operative to a 2 APL. So you got to watch out. If you're relying on fighting the Geomancer twice, that is not going to be an option unless you parry out that crit right away. Okay, so just keep in mind that is a trick the Geomancer has up her sleeve. Okay, one thing to point out here, we see a piercing crits 2 on this part matter profile of the Tremor Glaive, which means that the Geomancer can breach for 1 less AP as long as it doesn't shoot or charge in the same activation. Okay, but however, you could get around this if they breach for 1 AP on a counteract, or if they breach and then in the counteract they shoot, they can kind of breach and shoot. So as long as they're doing that shoot action separate from the breach, not in the same activation, they can do it. Keep in mind they can breach and then do the 8-inch range, kind of destroy terrain and damage you in the same activation because it's not actually counting as a shoot action. So just something to keep in mind. Geomancer has access to breach more easily. Okay, then we're going into the Canoptek Tomb Crawlers, and we're going to go to the Transdimensional Isolator, which is a weapon you can take only one of. So one of the crawlers will have this weapon. After the operative uses this weapon, if you inflicted damage or retained any critical successes, if the target wasn't incapacitated, roll 2d6. If the result is higher than the target's remaining wounds, the target is incapacitated. Okay, so this I would consider the most powerful shooting attack in the game, because it can do up to 30 damage in one attack. It's got 5 attacks, and it's got basically 5/6. So 5 attacks, 5/6 can get up to 30 damage. If they roll all normals and you make no saves, they could do 25 damage. So very, very powerful. And the most powerful thing about this is if they've done a bunch of damage to you and then they roll 2d6. So let's say you have a Space Marine Deathwatch and they're 15 wounds. If they do push through 2 normals onto you, they do 10 damage. After doing that damage, they roll 2d6. If they roll 2 5s, for example, or a 6 and a 4, they will have 10. Now, you will only have 5 wounds remaining. So the result is higher than your remaining wounds. You will just be straight incapacitated. This is very important because it's been clarified that it can bypass any rules that prevent incapacitation, like Medic, Frenzy from Felgor Ravagers, Reanimation from Pyrotech Circle. And then another example is the Jaeger Thane can also have a prevent incapacitation ability. This will bypass that. Okay, so as long as they roll 2d higher than your remaining wounds after shooting you, they can just straight banish you to another dimension and you don't get any saving abilities. The crazy thing with this weapon is it can be shot up to 3 times per turn, activation, command, and counteract, and they get accurate 2 plus ceaseless if they're on the matrix. Okay, so this crazy gun can be shot 3 times. If you go ham in with Goremongers, you're going in, you're trying to do a lot of damage, and you open yourself up to 3 shots, that could be 3 Goremongers just sent to another dimension, which is going to catch you really off guard. Okay, their other profile on the Tomb Crawler, so their other Tomb Crawler. Oh, and one thing, this big transdimensional isolator, it's cut off in this picture, but it's going to be their orb gun. Their other gun, the more square-looking gun, is going to be with 4 little turrets on it, is going to be the Twin Ghost Reapers. Has 2 different profiles, piercing 1 severe, 5 attacks, 4/5, or they could do a Torrent 1 sweeping profile with 1 less attack, but they get Torrent 1 inch. So think of it like an infinite range crack grenade with severe, and then with the option to go 1 less attack, 4 attacks from 5 with Torrent 1. And it only has 4 attacks in combat. So, and they only have access to the accurate 2 in combat. So this might be one weak spot you can target with the crawlers. They're still decent in combat, but they're not the best. You may be able to overwhelm their dice if they roll poorly. Okay, now getting into the macro site part of the team. All similar, kind of 4 attacks, 4 ups, 3-4 is the general thing you're going to be looking for. The warriors have access to piercing 1 if they take the Gauss scalpel. If they take the Tesla caster, they have access to a 5 attack, 4 ups, 2-3 blast 2. So this is something you really got to look out for. Blast 2, even with a 2-3 damage profile on Tomb World, will get to lethal 5, and they can spike a lot. They can come through walls, take you off guard. You got to look out for that. So really pretty decent profiles, especially if these warriors are shooting from the matrix. They can do a lot of damage. If they're off the matrix, they're going to be a little bit less reliable. The macrosite Reanimator is only 6-inch range gun, and the Accelerator is only a 4-inch range gun. So the support pieces don't really do much in terms of shooting. They're going to be more there for support. All of these have pretty much claws and tail, which is going to be 4 attacks, 4 up, 3-4 in combat. The Accelerator's the weakest in combat, but it does have stun. Okay, so that double fight thing here applies to the Accelerator in addition to the Geomancer, but it only has 3 attacks, so you probably can hopefully parry it if you have a crit. Now we're going to be going into general strategies. So in our diagram here, since the Matrix can cover 2 objectives, they will try to play for crit op, placing their crawlers on the objectives to score. You can probably bet that they're going to try to maximize 2 of the objectives, especially on Volcus, because they can measure through the walls. And you're going to be looking very precisely where this matrix is. They will try to bend the matrix to reach their support pieces behind cover to make reanimation saves without exposing themselves. So here in this diagram, we see that they're able to get 2 nodes on 2 different objectives and then have the third one reaching behind cover so that their 2 support operatives can support the big crawlers on the objectives while staying safe. Another strategy that they can do is just give that molecular breach to a warrior, give them 3 APL, and then they'll move dash shoot through a wall into your operatives that you were considering to be safe. With lethal 5 on close quarters, they could do a lot of lethal blast damage to horde teams, or they can kind of get in elite's face and probably do a little bit of chip damage quite reliably as well. So watch out for them coming into you. It's going to be very hard to avoid other than trying to space your operatives out so you're not going to give them too many good targets. Now getting into their tack off choices. Now without martyrs, they're going to be kind of locked into 3 main strategies. Those strategies are going to be envoy from security, plant banner from security, and retrieval from recon. Namely, envoy and retrieval will probably be their 2 main strategies. Now, envoy, they are very good, a lot of good synergy with envoy because they can choose their warriors that have 7-inch move as envoy. They have access, like we saw, to teleport them up to 10 inches, even 12 inches if they need to, with that little bit extra movement from Canoptek control. And if they outnumber your team, they are going to be looking to do envoy here. So look for spots in your territory where they're going to just try to get a little bit of a warrior in there at the last activation. So this is something that you got to be careful of. If you think they're just going to score envoy, you might want to go more aggressive with your team, as they can just do this very reliably. Retrieval is another one they can do very reliably, a really good synergy. As we saw, they could just do it through a node marker. They can retrieve from a node marker. They have really good ways of controlling objectives to then do the retrieve action. The Geomancer can do it from any node marker. So they also have quite a bit of tankiness. So once they retrieve, they are going to be able probably to keep carrying those retrieval markers until the end of the game. Another good synergy they have is with that extra bit of movement. If you leave your back objective exposed, their warriors can just fly and reach your objective if you're not careful. So something to watch out for there. Plant banner is another one. If neither of envoy or retrieval is a good pick for them, they're going to try to do plant banner. If they think they can hold a spot better than your team can, they're going to do plant banner. Really good synergy, as the Geomancer can plant a banner from just the node marker itself. Like we saw earlier, they could just shoot up a node marker somewhere where you're not and plant a banner there. On Tomb World, they can just have warriors fly through walls, plant it in a safe room. If you've overcommitted to one side, they just plant a banner on the other side and just use one warrior to claim it. And then crawlers controlling a banner can be very hard to shift as well. So this is a good one for them as well. Either of these three strategies is going to be good. So now that we've gone through all their strengths, it can seem like they have just no weaknesses. So we're going to go into the weaknesses. And what can men do against such reckless obelisk nodes? Okay, we want to be looking to hunt them off their matrix, or try to get it so that their matrix isn't intervening. Always look out for whether they're on the matrix or not. There's probably going to be moments where you can catch them off their matrix. You got to be really looking out for those. All of their defensive buffs come from the matrix. Okay, so they have to be on the matrix or have it intervening. If they don't have either of those, they're going to be naked without any buffs to their saves. They're still going to be relatively hard to kill, but they'll be a lot easier to kill if they're off the matrix. And we're going to be looking out very specifically for the Accelerator and the Reanimator. Why? Because they are equivalent in kill op to the Geomancer and Tomb Crawler. So killing each of these gives you 1 kill op point each. Okay, and they're only 7 wounds, 4 up saves. So really look to try to get around, see where these operatives are, take them as priority targets, because taking these down will make the Tomb Crawlers and Geomancer easier to take down. They will also prevent the team from working so well, and they give you 1 VP for kill op each. Okay, and there will be moments where your opponent plays so well that you have no option but to shoot these operatives on the matrix. The things that can get through the matrix buffs the best are going to be lethal 5 up, torrent, blast, or rending are going to be the best way to kill the Geomancer. The reason that is that the lethal 5+ will overwhelm their 3 saves, even if they make all 3 saves, because a crit requires 2 normals to get. So having extra crits is going to give you your best chance. Rending, again, getting more crits is going to give you the best chance. And then Torrent or Blast against the Geomancer will bypass the Sacrificial Thrall ploy. So that's going to be very, very key there. If you have any access to powerful Torrent or Blast, the Geomancer cannot be saved by one of his Canoptek constructs. Against the Crawlers, lethal 5 Rending, best way to kill them. Extra crits can bypass their 3 up saves. Piercing 1 or 2, they have no way of reducing piercing like the Geomancer has. So we're going to try to use the piercing weapons against them. Just keep in mind that you're going to try to want to damage them and then finish them off in combat, because they can't be reanimated in combat. Also in combat, they only have access to Accurate 2, not Ceaseless, as they only have 4 attacks. Okay, so these are ways that you can get at the Crawlers. The Warriors, ideally, you don't kill them one at a time. Either try to kill them all at once or not at all if possible, as one can come back each turn. You're going to try to have to balance this. You might need to kill them because they're going to maybe be contesting or doing things, but if you can kill them all at once, only one of them could come back. So all at once in the same turn, that is. So only one of them can come back the next turn. So it's going to give you the best value there. Or you can try to ignore them at your risk and just put all your resources into killing the 5 operatives that do actually count for kill op. So it's going to be a little bit of a delicate balance there. Okay, just reiterating some things to look out for. Watch out for the 10-inch moves through walls from any operative. Don't deploy bunched up. They have a lot of access to Blast and even Torrent 1. Keep this in mind when you're moving your operatives around, even after deployment. Try not to move your operatives within 2 inches or 1 inch of each other. You could open yourself up to big blasts. Geomancer Seek Light Stun and Pseudo Seek within 8 inches as well. You got to watch out for this on Tomb World or Gallowdark. And you want to, again, we have our 3 different examples of where the matrix is. You want to deploy spread out so that you can react to where their matrix is, or you could try to predict where their matrix is going to go, because once their matrix is down, it's not going to be able to move around too much, and they are going to try to play around that matrix. So just keep in mind, they're going to be kind of predictable playing around this matrix, which can only really span 12 inches. So try to be aware of that. Look for scoring, look at where their matrix is, try to get the other objective maybe they've left open. Try to maybe spread their resources out in your own strategy, because fighting them in defensive position will give them the best odds of winning, as they have all their buffs around the matrix. Hopefully that gave you a lot of information you didn't know before and some interesting strategies to keep in mind. However, they are still a new team, still getting to know how to play against them. So if you have any strategies or tech that we've missed, if you have anything from your favorite teams that you think would be effective against Canoptek, let us know in the comments. We'd love to know. Here at Twinhammer, especially myself, Thomas, I love picking off meta teams, going against the baddest threat and trying to bring it down. So hopefully this gives the rest of the teams that feel a little bit underpowered against this team some tech into them. Okay, thank you so much for watching. And again, if you need anything Kill Team, our friends at Top Shelf Co. will take care of you very well. If you're interested in joining this Canoptic menace, or if you are looking to combat them with a new team, they will take care of you very, very well. Okay, Canoptek, very cool team. Looking for some very good games against them. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your week, and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.